Good afternoon. I think everyone, if you'd like an agenda of what we have covered, it's over here. We are going to make a change, if that's all right with everyone, because of the guests that we have here. And I'd like to move under action items. I'd like to move item F and G right beneath item A for consideration. And that would allow one of our visitors to not have to sit through some of the more exciting things like setting a public hearing and executing an order on line residual, unless you would like to learn all about this. So with that, it is July 23rd, meeting of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees. We have a consent agenda, and I'd like to ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion or questions for Ted? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Our next meeting date is August 27th. I know I've notified Ted and Michelle I will not be there, but so if we have any other concerns with anyone else not attending or babies coming early,
Yeah, it would be questionable.
we'll
Very questionable.
We'll keep a close eye on really what we need for a quorum, so. And is there flexibility among the board or the staff? Would we want to consider changing that day? I'll leave that up to you, Ted. to
Okay, we
kind
can
of
certainly look into
investigate.
that and see, do a little polling and see if there's another
If you
day.
change it for a baby, the baby will change.
Yeah.
I wouldn't try to anticipate that.
We'll change it for Sue
So,
perhaps.
I mean, if you wanna move it earlier though, and encourage it to come.
You would be all for that.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay. Okay, moving ahead, we have action item A, and action item A is the appeal of the backflow prevention detention. We had a lengthy discussion on this in our, we had a separate meeting just to really learn about this, and a great presentation, I think, by legal. So, Kat, would you like to talk about this one?
Sure, this item A specifically relates to a customer request, an appeal related to backflow installation requirements. This originally came to the board a month ago, and the decision was made at that meeting to defer until the board had the opportunity to hear from legal counsel some of the legal basis for backflow prevention requirements here in the state of Iowa. We did have that meeting, working session on July 16th. Many of you were there and had the opportunity to hear John Landy present on the legal basis. He did a nice job of kind of stepping us through, helping us understand that this starts with recommendations even at the national level from EP and others, but the rules start with Department of Public Health, the state of Iowa, which are then implemented by cities, in this case specifically the city of Des Moines, who gives authority for implementation of Des Moines Waterworks, and we are implementing those requirements. Backflow for containment is required, not only for new facilities, but also for existing if hazards are present. The buildings in question have boilers, which are considered hazards to the public water supply. And staff would continue to recommend that we ask the customer in this case to install backflow prevention for containment at both of these addresses.
We may have some discussion, but I'll first look for a motion for the staff recommendation to deny the appeal and uphold the staff determination to require installation of black backflow devices for containment at 3808 and 3830 6th Avenue. We
I
have a
move to
motion.
support the staff recommendation.
Okay, is there a second?
Do you need a second before discussion?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I just wondered, I'd like it to read that Rich does have city-approved backflows, and he always has. Our argument is they have to be put immediately on the front of the building.
Correct. The customer indicated that he has isolation devices at the boilers. Our program does require containment devices in addition to that at the service entrance.
I do think though in the presentation, because we talked about that, it's my understanding that when this is handed off to us, and as it was through this section 26-628, we then need to administer how we would handle an effective program. So we have a policy in place and so that's what we are upholding. That is part of what we are upholding.
We are implementing the Department of Health's rules through the city of Des Moines. Exactly.
In our interpretation.
In our legal, let's be clear, we did engage legal counsel on this. So,
I'd like that brought up a little later, another subject, another time.
okay, for another meeting, are you saying, Dave, or?
Let me
today.
decide how to do this.
Okay, sounds good.
And information sense.
All right. But at this point, we did have the action coming before us and the applicant had an opportunity to apply for an appeal, and so we've gone through that process now. So all in favor of the.
I just also wanted to add that prior to this meeting, I just wanted to confirm that this is something that we are implementing across our customer wide. But it's a matter of how soon we get to everybody, correct? So that's one of the things I just wanted to make sure that we weren't picking and choosing and targeting.
Great point.
Yeah, you're correct. The expectation will be the same of all customers in a similar situation who have a boiler or other potentially hazardous fixture in their facility. Same expectations will apply.
And I think you delineated the areas that you've gone through and you just happen to get to Rich's now. And that you've taken care of the real hazards, the industrial and the hospitals.
We did start with the highest hazard facilities first, that is correct, Dave. Hospitals, medical facilities, dental, and then we moved on to industrial, other commercial. And now as we have moved down the list, we are doing our work in more of a geographic area. When we go into an area, we try to work with everyone in that area. And we will move throughout the system and cover everyone ultimately.
Okay. And there was a spreadsheet that Ted shared at the meeting, so if anyone would like a copy of that, it's very systematic in the approach, so. I think.
Could I have another copy of that?
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? Counselor, anything else you want to add for the record?
I would just add that the requirement for backflow protection with containment, which is the issue about where it's located, is specified under the state of Iowa rules and the Des Moines City Council ordinance. And so that is not a matter for the board's determination.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Move all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
And we probably didn't need to do this because Rich is installing them before he sells the buildings.
Okay. we probably didn't need to take this action. I mean, he was the one that requested the.
Well, he left during our meeting because he saw the thinking
Okay,
and heard some of the things that were said. But he'll not have any buildings soon, so.
okay. Well, if this needs to come up at a later date.
I think we need to talk about some of our advice, yes.
Okay, so moving along, we're going to go to action item F, as we originally stated, and that is an update on the Park Foundation activities and approval of creative design elements and donor signage.
Sue, I think this is kind of an exciting agenda item, something that I think you'll all find very interesting. There were a number of parts of the phase one design that were envisioned all along, but they were not completely fleshed out, completely detailed out in the original design plans and specifications that were approved. Some of those things were the more creative and interesting elements within the plan, including the signage and the art piece and the play equipment. There were also some things that just weren't complete at that time, the concert schedule that the donor list. There's a lot of things that really make the project complete. What we have here today is an opportunity for Mike McKernan to give us a little presentation with a lot of graphics so you can kind of see exactly how these things have come to fruition and see all of the gifts, if you will, that the Park Foundation is about to give Waterworks Park, and then have the opportunity to discuss and approve them. So, Michael, take it away.
If you can go to on mode behind you, Ted, I'll try and march us through this. I will encourage you to stop me as we go, of course. I really feel like I'm just a conduit here. As I prepared this, I realized that something, a greater vision for the park has been a topic of conversation around here for probably 20, 30 years, maybe longer. I would say in the last decade, that has really grabbed some traction, and there are tangible things just to the north of us here that are in service, and it's time to share with you the status of that, as well as get some approval, as Ted said, on some of the creative elements related to these improvements. I start here kind of living vicariously through the photo here. This is a picture from the first live event that occurred in the park. Yeah, there's performance fog and purple lights, but as I march through this, a theme that I want to share is some great balance. This is not all about an amphitheater. This is about improvements, plural, amphitheater being one. So bear that in mind as we walk through this. Our ultimate goal today is going to be to get you to a point where we think you can confidently approve and discuss the creative things here. I want to just walk back a little bit, again, talking about this from a broad perspective, and then identify some things that we can use moving forward. There was a vision, there was a design competition, there was a creation of a master plan. That master plan, I think, is dated February 14, that's 5 years ago. This board, Park Foundation, have engaged in a number of different, I'll just call them broadly agreements. There was an original memorandum of understanding, then came an operational agreement, a number of 28Es. And these 28E agreements and the operational agreement really, if you read those, they communicate the vision of the board to have a real balanced set of improvements here in the park. And you can just kind of see the timeline there. There's also some agreements with the city of Des Moines in regard to the Roulon Connector, another construction project. And then there's some agreements between the Park Foundation and the promoter and production team. And we'll talk about those a little bit today as well. But ultimately, a couple of those 28Es really enabled the construction of these improvements. One is the contract we have with Henkel. The other is the city's agreement with Kramer on the connector. with me here. Step one here today is to kind of take these four broad things: park, path, signage, creative elements. There's going to be three things that we talk about that we kind of lumped into the creative area. We're going to talk about donors and naming. This board has needs to approve the naming that's intended here. And then we also want to talk about the concerts and the concert calendar and give you an idea of what's on the calendar, where you can go to see those upcoming events and get an understanding of how that's been going thus far. We'll start with just some information about just the cycling community. There's some Central Iowa trail signage around the metro and beyond. These are images of trail signage not in Waterworks Park. These are things that are in the city and beyond our boundaries. Part of the efforts over the last year have brought these signs to our park, and you'll notice immediately that they have the same look and feel of the other signage that's present, again, in the metro and beyond. There is informational or educational content on these signs, and that material was vetted with Laura and others within our organization to make sure the content that was on the signs was appropriate and, in our view, appropriate for display in the park. So I've got two of the signs. The one on the left is the Wild. That is a sign that is on the south side of the bridge that goes over the Raccoon River, gets you into that area of the park, what I say north of the river. The Great Western Trail sign that's in the middle, that's a little further west. It's down by what I call the park shelter, a little bit west of there. Again, a nice sign, go inbound and outbound material on that sign as people come in and out of the park. There's a third sign that is harder for Mr. McKernan to get to. I've been encouraged to get on a bicycle and go find it. I'm going to just tell you it's north of the river and it's west of here. Ted, can you be more specific on where that is at? Greenwood Park?
It's south of Greenwood Park,
Okay.
Where City Park property crosses the Waterworks Park property. Very similar though, I'm looking for.
So these are in place. We want you to know about these and understand that there's been a lot of work to kind of get them to match, and they clearly do. We're going to move on to the creative elements now. We have three of these. We're going to talk about an art piece called the River Constellation, then we'll get into some two different play area gear equipment. This River Constellation piece effectively related to the donation from Kyle and Sharon Krause Family Foundation. The artists here are Bo Kenyon and Natalie Zuko. Bo is a former Iowan. There's a little bit of an Iowa hook here. He now lives out of state, but he is an Iowa native. I just kind of want to try and describe this to you. There's going to be 40 poles. These poles are about 10 foot in height. And then on these poles are going to be these illuminated orbs, okay? And this piece is going to have light and sound. There will be natural recordings of sounds from the park. There may be even personal recordings talking about the park. The positioning of the poles has been done in a way to mimic the pattern of the Raccoon River north and west of here. So there's some subtle hooks, okay, between what serves the greater Des Moines community and the way these poles have been laid out. This piece has been through the Public Art Foundation approval process, and there was a jury process with that included Des Moines Waterworks staff as well as Park Foundation board members. There's one other element of this that I want to call out to your attention. The intention right now, the foundation and the artist, if you will recall, the area to the north prior to this project beginning, there were a number of memorial trees out there. Those memorial trees had to, unfortunately, go in order to enable the project. Jess and her team have an inventory of whose tree was was removed this project. Those people with the tree are going to be recognized with some rings that will be installed on these poles. So I thought that was a nice touch. I wanted you to be aware of that. Other donors to the project will also have some kind of commemorative rings on these poles. I think the last thing I'd like to say on this before we advance is, I probably should have had a map here for you to better understand this, but the image here is really pretty good. You can kind of see the amphitheater on the left side of the image. We're looking north, so that river constellation art piece will be kind of south and just a little bit east of the amphitheater. Ted, what else would you add to this discussion on the river constellation itself?
You mentioned that it's been through the Public Art Foundation process. It's been quite a vetting process to get to where we are here today, where we're able to bring it to the board for consideration. But
The only thing I'd add to this, for people to keep in mind, those rings that will go on and around this piece of art, as Mike mentioned, it recognizes people whose trees, the families whose trees may have been removed. But it's also an opportunity for individual donors to participate in some way too. Similar to, I think the idea is similar to the names on the bridge at Great Lake. I think there'll be other opportunities like this at the foundation, but this is kind of the first time for people to participate, which I think is going to be kind of exciting, because I think after this summer with the amphitheater opening and the tunnel getting closer, I think people want to have a part in this process. And so, and it's going to be in such a prominent place in the park that, you know, as you come through the tunnel or you go to the amphitheater, it's going to be a place to see it. So from a donor recognition standpoint, I think it's a really kind of great first opportunity.
Grant, do you know about how many of those rings they are planning?
Well, I think there's 200 to 300 rings totally, and
I'm short that piece of information.
and
That
they are
doesn't surprise me,
working.
though.
Yeah, they're working on the number of rings, the cost of fabricating the rings, and then also what they will charge for those rings, because a lot of us have been through this process. You want to hit that sweet spot where it's not, you know, it's not too much, but it's not too little. The last number I heard was they were kind of thinking around $250, I think.
Or I'm getting that number confused with how many rings.
There may be, but it's all about the same. I guess stay tuned on that. And I think the other thing, what I've heard from the foundation is that, you know, they're gonna look for other opportunities as well throughout the park for that kind of individual donor. But I do think the public's hungry for that part. And the way I understand those rings are probably brass or some sort of metal that go around that. So kind of imagine in between those orbs where those would go. So
Right.
that'll kind of be a cool thing where you can walk around,
go find
listen
your
to,
ring.
listen to the sounds and find your ring. And so it was very hard for me to visualize this, and still is, but it sounds good.
Let's step on to the play here. Both on the west side of the amphitheater and the east side of the amphitheater are sections of the park that have been identified for these natural play areas. But we really have not been in a position until recently to kind of share with you, you know, what is kind of envisioned there. So I'm going to talk about these, both of them. This is the west one. This is the Reichardt natural play area. This is still being refined, but I want to offer a couple tidbits about what's kind of envisioned here. Again, we're refining the Park Foundation is coordinating and refining that with Country Landscapes, as well as our own staff. I want to give the Park Foundation kind of a nod here. The coordination between Sam and others and our staff, Jessica Barnett in particular, has been noteworthy. But they're working out the details here, again, between the designer and the donor. The intention here would be to have an wheelchair accessible merry-go-round area. The surface in that area is going to be a little bit different than the rest. There's going to be some special rubber base in there. The other parts of the area are going to be more about, you know, wooden playscapes. a mulch base, some swings, a rope climb, and a lot of the stock material that's gonna be needed for these wooden structures is gonna come from Mother Nature. The Raccoon River and Mother Nature deliver down trees to us on occasion. And again, Country Landscapes in coordination with Jessica are gonna do as much as they can to get the material from what's been given to us naturally, if you can be so optimistic about such a thing. There's a wall structure kind of in the back. You can see that kind of at the top of the image. Again, there's an intention to either incorporate actual boards from our barn or to incorporate boards that emulate our barn. So the barn is going to be going away, but maybe some hints of its history here at the Moines Waterworks will remain. The center area of this is really hard to see in this image, but it's maybe the most visual thing that you can see when you go outside. The center of this play area has got that the berms and the rolling undulations. Again, that is grass area that is, again, been shaped to kind of mimic swirling water or little eddies in the river. So that's the right cart natural play area. Again, this is on the west side, easily identifiable by those berms in the middle.
This is the one would be in the more shady of the two areas, correct?
No, this
Or
would be
this
the
is
less
more sunny?
shady.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to get it right in my head.
Yeah. But thanks for the segue, because the next one is to the east, Graham,
There we go.
and that, you see this little circle to the right? These are what we call these little VIP circles. I believe Andrea and I were in attendance at the most recent Park Foundation meeting, and this rendering doesn't quite do justice in regard to the shade. We had a meeting in that VIP circle 2 weeks ago, and you feel like you are just under the umbrella of these trees. So, and that's really what this play area is about. This stuff is going to be kind of tucked up underneath the trees and within the trees. And again, the concept here is, this is a little bit earlier in its development, but conceptually here, what we're talking about is there's gonna be some swing elements. Some of these may actually be attached to the trees. There's gonna be a central elevated platform with some adventure spokes going out. And again, this concept of tucking things underneath the trees or up into the trees is something that's gonna be desired or pursued. There's, at the bottom of this image, there's kind of I think they're trying to call it a little bit of a quiet area. And this can be kind of an optical illusion to look at, but this is a little bit of a cutout area, maybe a little like table in the middle. Again, accessible area, somewhat removed from the rest of the space, or maybe some quieter contemplations there. So those are the, we've covered 3 creative things, you know, the river constellation art piece, the Reichardt play area, and then this Barrett-Boson natural play area.
And let me just say, because these 2 play areas are kind of why I asked for this presentation. You know, I know all of us agree that our board doesn't want to be involved in the foundation work of designing this and that sort of thing. What I'm so pleased to see in the visual presentation of this is where these play areas are going to be seated, but also that the thought has been given to all of the things that we need to take care of in discharging our duties as a board, and that is that safety has been considered, accessibility is going to be mandated on these things. And that's why I think it's so important that these be brought to us so that we can see them and approve them and be involved. Not, as I said, we don't want to be involved in picking what colors they are and that sort of thing, but they fit into what this board's vision is for this area, and I think they clearly do.
Yeah, I want to echo that. What I like about all the design elements is that it's not a over-programmed playground. It fits in with our kind of mission and the way that we think about kind of the natural resources of the area, and I appreciate the thought that went into that.
When you think about, for a child with accessibility issues, this park is gonna provide things that no other park in the area does. I mean, the ability to access this on a paved, concrete access, really from parking lot to the structure, and then into the structure itself, where not all of that is paved, but it's graded appropriately to get in there. I mean, we have great parks in Des Moines, but I'm not sure there's anything like these two play areas. You know, and that's, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's job well done.
And you know, it's interesting, during the development of all this, we became aware that this is one of the most accessible fishing places in the city too.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, I hadn't either, we can just pull right up along the road and get out and fish. So this is becoming a very accessible amenity for,
Yeah.
you know.
My next step here is to talk about donors and donor naming rights. And so I want to call your attention to your board memo has an attachment to it, a colorful one at that kind of shows all the donors. Some folks on this list are simply donors. Other people are donors that wish to have a higher level of recognition in regard to naming a part of the improvement. So your packet contains the list of donors, and in some cases where there's a naming intention, that is on the list. I'm going to show you some images now that allow us to kind of understand from an overview what areas intended to be named and how that may look. So it's kind of got some black and white backgrounds here. And I need a number of images here to recognize the donors. There's over $11 million of donors presently that the Park Foundation has been able to garner. So these people have been instrumental in the gift giving here that brings these improvements to the park. We've talked about the Reichardt play area. Again, you can kind of see where it's at. It's west of the amphitheater. The Bozen play area that we discussed, it's to the east of the amphitheater. Those VIP circles that I talked about, there's one on each side of the amphitheater. Again, those are great little meeting places. We've had a couple meetings up there. I've seen other groups meet and gather there. The donors associated with those elements include Prairie Meadows and John Deere. The Great Lawn, you will not see Drew and Tanya Manat's name on the attachment to the board packet. There's an anonymous donor. The anonymity goes away today. Anonymous donor on your list is Drew and Tanya Manat for the Great Lawn. And then south, there's a kind of a south side to that amphitheater, kind of a smaller area. There's a little nice looking lawn area south of the amphitheater. And there's a circle that kind of encompasses that grass area, and that is associated with Trudy Hurd's gift. Getting a little more granular, to give you a sense here, and I will probably just kind of start at 10 or 11 o'clock up there with the Hubble celebration lawn. I just talked about that gift from Trudy Hurd being that circle around that lawn area. Well, that little small lawn area is the Hubble celebration lawn. The amphitheater itself, in big picture, is called the Lauritsen Amphitheater. The south stage of that amphitheater is associated with the Killinger family. We talked about the River Constellation art piece, that's the Krause family. There's some pathways that lead you east of this central area. We tend to call this the meander. A principle is associated with that. There's a kind of a garden area a little bit further east, and that is the Kane family. Tell me I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ted.
I believe you are.
Okay. And then east of there is the Rouen Connector. And again, that Rouen Connector, the construction of that is outside the bounds of our construction contract, but that will be something that was part of the master plan to kind of get the Grays Lake area and Waterworks Park more fluently connected. So you can have a sense there of what's being named.
Can I just comment on that? Because Ted and I had a conversation about that process. We had a conversation, we've had a number of conversations with this board and the foundation, about the importance of naming and recognizing donors and doing that appropriately. When we started this project, and we should, going forward, always be concerned that this board, again, that our vision and, our protection of the park is honored. We're the spokesman and we're the voice of the people on this. And so, obviously, these it's unbelievable. These are great names. This is a great thing. Going forward, it will be important for this board to have continue that process of working with the foundation, where when the foundation goes beyond phase one, which they're about to do, and start thinking of that we continue that conversation so that when naming opportunities, and we're gonna have an opportunity here in a minute to talk about something that wasn't part of phase one in our next agenda item, that it be brought to this board so that we understand it, we can approve it, and that goes for the naming as well. That we just continue to be involved. So much like my comment about the play equipment, making sure that it fits into our vision, all of these things, whether it's a sculpture we're gonna discuss next for the naming, that we develop that process and follow that process going forward so that board members that follow us understand their responsibility and know how to do it, so.
Absolutely.
That goes to my question, and I should know the answer to this, I apologize, I don't. Are these all definite confirmed names of different items?
But that's certainly the intention.
I'm just thinking through about our future discussion on other memorials.
Well, yeah, and see, that's a good point, because I would treat those much like we're gonna treat the next agenda item, right? Those are outside of phase one, and so each one of those should be brought to us as an individual, consideration to consider.
But I'm thinking about our potential for Bill.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. And I think that we have to be judicious in that process to consider those things. And so whether that opportunity bubbles up through the foundation and they come to us, or it's something as your example, something that we talk about for Bill Stowe, we may take the lead on and then work with the foundation. Either way, we need to be involved in that and do it the appropriate way.
We certainly, we talked about naming, as you mentioned, several times, and we had the understanding that the foundation was raising money and they were naming opportunities, and they went through the process that we identified for them to get to this point. Going forward, it will be less like that, and it will be more, I assume, of a one-off, where something will come to us as an opportunity and we will make a decision. I think you're not talking about, though, people who want to donate money for a ring to have their name
No,
on a
absolutely,
pole. That's a separate
That's a
thing.
separate thing.
Good clarity there, thank you.
I mean, there could be, and this is up to the foundation, they could decide to pursue a phase two that is similar to phase one, that has lots of different elements. And therefore, they would come to us with a phase one, and there would be multiple 2080 agreements, and we would kind of approve a concept like we did here. I kind of hope that's what happens, and I think that there's the opportunity to do that. But in between or after, there will probably be this more à la carte type of thing, and we should still follow the same type of process.
I'll just add one thing here. This process of putting this presentation together, it's forced us to do a very constructive thing. Go back to those 2080 agreements, go back to that operational agreement. The themes, the things that you're talking about, those are in the 2080. We need to follow those.
Right. And it's no different than, I had a discussion with a number of people after the initial concerts were underway. We've talked a lot about concerts, and we continue to need to do that. Over the next 2 years, I think, it's gonna become very clear what type of concerts wanna be, what type of events and bands wanna perform here, and what type of events and bands we want to have perform here. And so we kinda need to go through this growing phase and listen to the sound, and which I did the other night. I drove around Thursday, we'll talk about that, but and learn from that. But I'm gonna say that through phase one, the learning process has been pretty great.
I would agree.
All right, let's stay on donors and donor signage here. Couple more I guess I call them more unique. There's Mid-American made a contribution to the Park Foundation. They intend to have a powered by kind of element for them. Not even on our property though, there's this next one on this Siegel Family Foundation. I want you to know that this is really the Park Foundation paid for this. There were some issues with bicycle traffic on the levee, clear west over by Quick Trip, just on the demarcation of Des Moines and West Des Moines. The Corps was raising some issues with the wear and tear on the levee. That donor came up with a permanent improvement there to address the Corps' concerns. I think technically this is off our property, but I wanted you to know about them. They're a donor to the Park Foundation. They felt compelled to contribute to that part of it. There's some path donors, and again, if you study the list, you can see who some of the path donors are. You know, how do you name a path? I think they're still working through that a little bit. Conceptually though, I'm ready to tell you about how they hope to do that. And again, this is in concept phase and we're looking for your reaction / approval here on the concept. I've talked to you about this area south of the amphitheater, the herd circle and the Hubble lawn. Envision on the south end of that lawn there being kind of a large donor wall, 3 panels. In the middle is kind of a map. You know, I've shown you maps that are identifying what parts of the park are associated with which specific donor. The intention here would be have some sort of map on the middle panel, and then flanked left and right would be names associated with a certain element of the naming intention. And again, this donor wall is targeted at recognizing those donors at 25,000 and above. So that kind of shrinks the list a little bit that you have, but those would be the donors that we're trying to recognize on the donor wall. I think I want to just pause there for a moment. Well, I guess I have one more image to show you. There's some contemplation here also for maybe some navigational signs. I think the root of the donor recognition is the donor wall, but in addition to the donor wall, we may scatter in a few of these navigational signs, or maybe even some signs that would, again, denote an area in a way that is professional and respectful of the donation and the gift. Okay, I'm going to move to, all these things we've talked about so far, haven't mentioned the concert. We're getting to the music right now. It's obvious the amphitheater is incredibly visible, but as I mentioned, we just covered a number of items that are well beyond the amphitheater. There's other elements of the park that were envisioned and that will honestly govern or dictate the predominant use. You know, the concerts are these 12 to 20 times a year maybe. There's a lot of other days in the year for those park improvements to be enjoyed by the community. But this is what the schedule looks like right now. Some of these have already been conducted. I think we're through the July 18th performance by Chase Rice. All the other performances above that occurred with the exception of Clint Black. Clint got rained out. They had to make a call about 24 hours in advance of that, and that turned out to be an excellent call. Some pretty strong weather came in. From my seat, when I started to see the schedule develop, I was very concerned about, you know, we haven't finished construction and we're putting out flyers for events, and that made me very nervous. Again, I tip my hat. The Park Foundation made some extra expenses on the project to get some grass to grow out on the Great Lawn and other areas. They put some extra dollars into the project to really help enable this schedule to kind of see some reality. Without some of the turf out there, I'm not sure we could have enjoyed the concerts that we've had to date. So again, just acknowledgement that some extra efforts went in there. Just real quick, the color coding here, I'm not a performance professional, but Michelle Watson is, so I got her help. Green would be country, blue would be symphonic type stuff, and then the red would be more of your rock and roll or pop type stuff. So that's what the schedule looks like. I feel compelled to tell you some highlights of this. I know we've had some noise complaints and we're working through those, but when you see people committed to success, and I'm talking about the Park Foundation and the promoter here, or actually the production company, Sam Carroll and Mr. Zamolek, they have worked tightly with our staff to manage parking, traffic flow, work with EMS, Des Moines Police. It's obvious that Mr. Zamolek is not conducting his first concerts. We feel like we're in good hands. That's a sentiment shared by myself and many others at Des Moines Waterworks. I'm on the board to hear that clearly today.
And I'll just say, I did drive around on Thursday night. There was the country concert. We had been to the Monday concert, which was a rock and roll concert, and I do think that noise carried probably a little bit more. A more repeating bass and a little bit higher tones as well. But we were out on Thursday night and we drove all around the Terrace neighborhood and into those areas. And frankly, we had to turn off our vehicle in order to hear the sound when we were up there. Now you could hear it. I'm not trying to downplay it, and I'm sure there are some areas where it's louder than where we were on the street. Frankly, there were motorcycles coming down Fleur that were much louder than the concert when we were up there. It really was not, I expected it to be louder than it was. And, you know, I'm not diminishing any of these people that have complained. Some concerts are gonna be louder than others, some nights are gonna carry sound better, more than others. But, we drove around, and in fact, Sam was driving around, and he actually had a sound meter that he was doing testing with. And so, I was pleased.
And I think it's important to note that we are out. The foundation, even the police are out, measuring the sound, evaluating whether we're within our permit limits, but also just hearing the people and trying to address concerns that they may have. We'll never get to the point where they can't hear it, but we certainly hope to get to the point where it's not offensive.
And on a weeknight, the music has to stop by 10.
10 o'clock,
And the weekends, it's
11 o'clock,
11 o'clock, and so it's,
an hour earlier than permit requirements in both cases.
right.
Permits, the city permits allow an hour more, but we're trying to be respectful.
And I had
Each of these events is gonna give us a chance to really interrogate and critique.
And I have suggested to the symphony believes that a Pops concert has to end with fireworks. And our staff won't allow fireworks to be launched from our park, but they can be launched nearby. But I've encouraged the symphony to think of doing something different. I mean, first of all, symphonies are a more quiet concert, then end it with loud bangs, maybe it's not a good idea. But, after seeing that stage and how well lights work, I think some sort of thought about incorporating a light show during or after, something that's different and not fireworks, might really bring people to the concert that's different, because it's different than fireworks.
And it could change it.
I mean, you imagine putting lasers up on all those big trees that are on the other side, and I think they could do really cool stuff.
It could be the signature.
I'm not sure I think they're pretty well, they think that a Pops concert has to have fireworks. I'm not sure that concert goes for it. But stay tuned.
This slide attempts to communicate to you the schedule. There's other places you can go to get the schedule. You can go to DesMoinesWaterworks.com, DMWW.com rather. Go to our event calendar month by month. You can see what's out there. Ted, is this other website, Des Moines Waterworks Park, is that a website that Tom's running, or the foundation? Foundation. Another excellent place to go and see what they have aligned. The images here are right off their website, and the gal on the upper right, Miss
Renee Elise Goldsberry.
Yeah, I was gonna mess
She
up
was
her last
Angelica in Hamilton,
Yeah,
among other things.
and she's amazing.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, Graham got to meet her.
The folks at the bottom are clad in makeup, and they're from the UK. At least the guy in front's got the makeup on today.
They are also
Those are the struts.
fantastic. But from a totally different
Yeah.
direction.
And then a symphony performance is kind of, that's an image from the website that's, well, I can tell you, it's not far away, the 28th, is that this weekend?
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
so,
John Williams.
before the meeting started, we were talking about a news clip from KCCI. KCCI came out one day and with a drone and got some great video. I grabbed some still images of that. The image at the top, again, this is toward the tail end of construction, but just seeing that great lawn in the amphitheater with our water treatment process in the foreground and the city of Des Moines downtown in the background. Nice image in my view, wanted to share that with you. And then there's kind of a more closer up drone video of the amphitheater itself and kind of get a sense of the magnitude of that. So I want to pause right here. We kind of covered a lot of things. The signage in the park, the 3 creative elements, the donor list, the concept for recognizing those donors, and we've reviewed the concept schedule. So any questions, comment before you need to act on this item today?
What I'd like, I want to make sure I understand this right. What I think we're going to do here, and what I'd like to be able to do is to approve everything that's been presented, kind of all of these initial, not the initial gifts, but these gifts that have been made as part of phase 1 that include the names that have been presented to us and all of the design elements that have been presented to us. And kind of approve it. And then I was talking to Dave, and Dave had a really good idea that I think wouldn't be part of the motion necessarily, but I think we'll make the motion and then talk about this. But Dave suggested that we plan some sort of a celebration with the foundation and other people.
Sure.
He suggested an ice cream social, which I'm always up for.
Ice cream always.
But maybe we can do something, as we get a little closer to fall, to kind of celebrate the success here. And I think that would be a great idea, Dave. I think that's
Employees
really a good
involved
idea.
too.
Yeah, and get the employees involved and the people from the foundation and do that, so. But if I kind of diverted there. So the motion here would be to accept the gifts that have been made, including the names that have been presented.
Right, the creative design elements, the donors, the signage, the whole thing. And I think, a lot of information, obviously, all of which is presented for your information and your consideration and ultimately your approval. But I think Graham stated it pretty well. What we're hoping for is a motion to approve all of those things, which under the 2080 agreements, the board has purview over.
With the understanding, like we talked about a few minutes ago, that going forward, these things would probably come to us, at least until there's a big phase 2,
Right.
would come to us individually. And so they
Exactly
would probably come to us with a concept, then they would probably come to us after they had design and a name and that sort of thing. So those would probably come to us as individual actions.
A couple of, I'm sorry.
But because this is phase 1, we're receiving it all kind of as a group. Is that a good way to say that?
It is. These happens, there were so many and they happened so quickly, and to bring them individually would have been doing 5 within a month. This is more trying to package them all together. Got a couple of great examples of the way it will work going forward. The next item is one example of how. The memorial for Bill is another example of something that's completely outside of this process where we'll actually bring it to planning, we'll hear concepts, we'll have opportunity to discuss what we want to do. Laura's going to give us a fabulous presentation, I'm confident, in August at the planning committee meeting to talk about where we want to go with that. That's a couple of examples of how this process will work going forward, but this is more of a global thing. All of the elements within this project for your consideration today.
Well, I would make that motion.
So the recommended action is to approve the Park Foundation creative design elements and donor signage presented to date,
Correct. Including the names that were presented.
and donor names.
So,
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next presentation is approval of the Ragbri sculpture within Phase 1 park improvements. Ted, I'll let you explain what we're doing on this.
Sure, Carl probably doesn't feel like he got moved up on the agenda. He did. Trust me.
You know, he's running for city council, he needs to get used to it.
Used to long meetings. This is an example, as Graham just said, of kind of how the process will work going forward for things that are were not specifically envisioned within the project. And this is really a neat opportunity for Waterworks Park for a couple of reasons. And such great timing. I mean, Ragbri 47 is underway. They're all riding from Winterset to Indianola today as we speak. Many of them have probably arrived and are doing what they do once they arrive. But a great opportunity for us, another potential gift to the park. Such great synergy between Ragbri and Waterworks Park. Ragbri had its start here in Des Moines. The first one, as I understand it, went right down Field Drive. We have hosted Ragbri in the park. With that, I'm going to let Mike kind of share some thoughts and some images, and then we'll give Carl the opportunity to share too.
This will be a little shorter. This, again, came from outside kind of the normal processes. I would say there's Ragbri enthusiasts, Carl being one of them. They led a fundraising effort of their own for an art piece to honor the Ragbri event and its originators, Carl and Karis, if I'm pronouncing those correctly. This art piece also went through the foundation approval process. And again, the Park Foundation was approached by this group. This art piece would essentially be a gift to both the foundation and ultimately the Waterworks with this possible approval today. I will share that this art piece meets with certainly the Park Foundation's approval as well as staff. We feel like the biking community uses the park extensively. Ted mentioned the fact that we've hosted riders in the past. This piece would be yet another draw to get riders and others to the East Node, which is that area we call, out here by the amphitheater. Recreation and sport certainly is an element of Ragbri, and something that I think you probably also see in the master plan of doing things outdoors and in nature. Let's talk a little bit more about this, where it would potentially land and what it might look like, and some other details about it. I need you to think south and west of the amphitheater. That constellation art piece is going to be kind of southeast of the amphitheater. This piece would land south and west along one of the walkways there. This thing has some size. It's near 55 feet in length. There's kind of a wave concept that rolls through this. There's an arch also in this. There's 24 wheels. And I believe there's some illuminated elements to this piece. The bronze figures, they can't get a hold of the purple lights or the performance fog, but they are going to be bumped up to 100% of life size. And then just a just a bigger image of that, again, located southwest of the amphitheater. Mr. Voss, would you like to make some comments about the art piece and your involvement in that?
Happy to do so. Yes, I'm Carl Voss. For people that attend a lot of meetings here, I'm also Zach Voss's dad. So this started working on this, I think, in 2015 over coffee, just a way to honor Donald Call, who's now deceased, and John Karis. And the 24 wheels that are about 29 inches in diameter represent wheels moving across Iowa with a band that is undulating. We went through a process of 117 artists and artist teams that submitted proposals, and we landed on an artist, Gail Falwell, who has a studio in Boulder. And she is recognized for doing sports-themed public art. Her art was the first art at the Football Hall of Fame in Canton. She builds all of her arts expecting that people are gonna climb all over it. So it's gonna be sturdy. And you'll be able to, if I went down there, I could park my bike beside John or Don and stand beside it. Or we expect people will sit on the rims. And so it will be built in a very sturdy manner. We believe this art will still be installed this fall. So just a little bit more about the story about Ragbri coming down Fluor Drive at that time when we had a different newspaper. And they had their fall circulation drive, and no one knew what was gonna happen with the first Ragbri. And so the circulation managers, as part of their fall circulation drive, said, why don't you bring them all down to Johnny and Kay's? And so but now, of course, it was a smaller ride, but came right down Fluor Drive, and they said they'll never do that again. So, we're pleased to be well on our way of getting this funded. As I told John Karras, John, we now have enough money for Donald. Now we just have to take care of you. So we're well over halfway. I
His
think
could be a
it's-
lot shorter, maybe, you don't raise enough.
Well, actually, you know what? They make bronze sculptures slightly larger than life size because bronze tends to shorten everyone. So John is 6'2", and I think his bronze is 6'6". So
There you go.
anyway, so all of the wheels will be illuminated with LED lights. So we are so pleased with the location, near the restrooms, near the parking lot. We know people that will come into Des Moines and want to experience Ragbri, just want to come out near the sculpture, near the primary path that goes through Waterworks, so it's close to the barn. And gosh, I don't know how far off of the road this is.
Less than 30 yards?
Yeah, and it's gonna be fabulous, lit at night, so people that are attending concerts will be able to enjoy this. We already have local teams and clubs that think this is gonna be their meeting place, so.
Is there a significance with the number 24?
No, just,
Looks good.
yeah, that looks good. It looks good. So that's about the size of an actual, there's a 29-inch wheel, a little bit larger than the standard wheel, that's about the size of a cyclocross rim if you're into biking. So.
Thank you. So we have, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the Ragbri sculpture within Phase 1 park improvements.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? All right, thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks so much.
Nice work,
Appreciate
Carl.
that.
Okay, we're going to go back to, and Mike, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that. Action item, we're gonna jump back to the acceptance of the nitrate removal facility, process residual force main.
Yes, quick overview here. I just want to start by saying this was a difficult project. You're all familiar with our desire to discontinue discharge of our nitrate residuals into the river, construction of the pumping station and the force main. This force main had to cross the river, multiple sets of tracks, go right down the middle of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway to a manhole right in the middle of the intersection of MLK and High Street, Mike, is that right?
I believe so.
Sounds difficult, and it was more difficult than we thought, honestly. You'll notice that this was a contract awarded in May of 2017, so 2.5 years ago almost. We had a number of delays related to conflicts with utilities, conflicts with the railroad, conflicts with debris in the ground as we tried to bore under tracks and levees and rivers. Contractor scheduling issues. Vern Rash had taken on this project after someone else left the utility, and there were a lot of hurdles for him to get over. He got over them all and got us to the finish line. The project is complete, it's in service, but it was not without about $300,000 in change orders, which is unusual for one of our projects. But you can see kind of the listing there, a couple of the more significant ones. We had to realign in MLK because of concrete backfill that was under the pavement, and we were having difficulty boring through. That was the biggest one. And then substituting casing materials to allow us to get under the river when we had some conflicts with a fiber optic duct bank that was on the other side of the river. I'm happy to go into as much detail as you'd like on any of those, but suffice it to say, it's an important project. It now is in service, and we would like to accept it.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept the nitrate removal facility process residual force main contract completed by Raccoon Valley Contractors LLC in the amount of $1,513,383.23.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay.
You know,
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm so proud of this project. I mean, this is something that we didn't have to do.
Right.
We did it, and we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. It has Bill Stowe's fingerprints all over it. And, you know, I don't think it's something that under a different leader would have ever happened. It just, as I say, it took longer than I think any of us wanted it to, and it cost a little bit more.
It was harder than we expected.
Yeah, and it was harder, but, you know, I just, my credit to everybody involved for seeing it through, because it would have been an easy thing to abandon, because we don't have to do it. But, I don't know, as a board member, I can sleep pretty well at night knowing that we did the right thing and nobody asked us to do it.
And about another half yet to go.
Right.
So we need to plan for that in the future.
Right. But I mean, it's really a great thing.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. And opposed? Moving on to item 3C. This is the request to authorize to issue a purchase order for the replacement RO membranes for the Saylorville water treatment plant.
Exactly, the membranes, the RO membranes are a wear part. They're consumables, 3 to 5 year life. They were all replaced in 2016. We are proposing to replace one of the 3 sets this year, try to get them on a staggered replacement schedule going forward. It was a budgeted project for this year. Actually, the prices came in a little under budget. We have a very specific type of membrane that we are required to use, a Dow Film Tech membrane, that if we ever wanted to use anything different, we would have to get approval from DNR and testing. So what we have here is 5 bids from 5 vendors for the same identical membrane, and clearly we have a low bidder and I'd like to award.
So I'm looking for a motion to authorize staff to issue a purchase order in the amount of $138,180 to Consolidated Water Solutions for purchase of replacement reverse osmosis membranes with a 3-year prorated warranty for the Saylorville water treatment plant.
Earned it on that one. So,
And a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Now, is this just off the shelf?
The membranes,
I mean, maybe it's ordered, but I mean, any company can,
no, we specifically have to order.
no, I mean, they can buy it from Dow.
These vendors have agreements with Dow that allow them to sell the Dow membranes. So they buy the membranes from Dow and then they resell them. And there are probably other vendors who are able to sell
But
them.
that's just a markup for passing it through, basically.
They're authorized vendors, I'm sure, yes, there is some amount of markup there. But we cannot buy them direct, but I'm aware of my.
That's certainly my understanding.
But that's what I mean, they don't really do anything, they just get it from Dow and pass it to us.
They don't do installation, or we do this?
We do the installation. They're a vendor like Walmart.
So why can't we buy it directly?
We can look into that. It's not unusual at all for a manufacturer to not sell direct. That's their business, is not the sales arm. They have agreements with outside sales vendors to sell their products. And sometimes those companies also sell services related to those products, like startup, like installation. In our case, we've got enough experience installing these on our own now that we feel like we can do the install ourselves.
Any other questions?
That's just interesting.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Moving along to item 3D, this is simply a request permission to establish a date of a public hearing for the city of Pleasantville. It's easement for the Youngtown Trail, Phase 2, and to set this date as of the August 2019 board meeting.
Yeah, Sue, I think you pretty well covered it. We're intending to grant Pleasantville an easement on our property for a bike trail, and we need to set a public hearing for the next one.
So I'm looking for a motion to establish the date of the 2019 board meeting as the date of the public hearing for the city of Pleasantville easement for recreational trail due to construction of the Youngstown Trail Phase 2, and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law.
So,
Second.
Okay, and would you mind sharing with me when we had a pre-meeting what you said?
I said that bike trails are one of our favorite things to have on top of our food mains, because then we know no one will build a building on top of it, and if we have to do repairs, they're fairly simple to excavate and redirect traffic, and bikes don't seem to get near as mad about detours as cars do. So we're pretty amenable to bike trails on top of our community.
Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving ahead, we have item 3E, and this is to request authorization for the CEO and general manager to execute change order number 1 to the 2015-2020 line residual disposal agreement with Synagro.
Yes, this is a fairly straightforward change order, but it's a large dollar amount. Something that we did take to the July planning committee. We have a fairly significant amount of lime residuals piled north of the lagoons at the Moines water treatment plant. And in the image that is attached to the board memo, you can see that the pile, that material was actually placed there during the BMG era. They were behind, we needed to get that material out. We piled it there on a temporary basis. We actually had hoped that we could use that material to build a third lagoon. We were gonna incorporate it with soil, and that project never came to fruition. We really don't have permission to store it there indefinitely, and so in this year's budget, we budgeted to remove about half of that material. We asked Synagro, who is our current lime hauler, for a price. They gave us a price of $18.50 a ton. We asked Riley for a price. Riley is the contractor who actually removed it from the lagoon and put it in the piles where it is. They gave us a price of $20 a ton. We've also looked at hauling it ourselves, which we can't get close to the $18.50 a ton that Synagro is offering. And so what we are proposing is change ordering our existing contract that we have with Synagro to add $750,000 to that contract to remove half of this material. Big change order, but we feel like we've done our due diligence, and this is the best way to dispose of that material at this time.
So we're looking for a motion to authorize CEO and general manager to approve change order number 1 to the 2015-2020 lime residual disposal agreement.
So moved.
And a second,
Second.
any other discussion?
Yeah,
Questions?
I remember when we did that several years ago. We had all these safeguards so that we paid properly, and then some other things happened. We found out the safeguards didn't work. How are we knowing that we're getting our money's worth? Have we measured it in some way, weighted, or?
We have a price per ton. And there's a scale out there, an actual truck scale that we will, every single load will go out on the truck scale. The truck scale is now monitored with video. We actually have a camera that monitors that truck scale every day, all the time. We get scale tickets, we take, Kyle's office assistant looks at a certain number of scale tickets every month to make sure that if the scale ticket says that a truck went across on this day at this time, that there's a truck on the video going across on that day at that time. Not every ticket, but just a certain amount.
We also have the weight is displayed, or we can see it in the video, so she can see the displayed weight of the truck and compare it to what the ticket is reading. So you can visually see it live from the video.
But they can't just drive around in circles and keep going up.
We would
across
see that in the
scale.
video, I'll be able to see them doing that or tampering with
'Cause
it.
I remember the presentation and how great it was gonna be monitored, and then we had, what, $1 million loss or?
Before we did not have cameras there previously.
You wanna talk about the field checks also, Kyle? And I know this material is going to a single spot, but we also do field checks to prevent what Dave's talking about.
We look at each month of where the product is going and they provide us reports. We then go out and look at these sites to make sure that the product is being spread and that the amount that we're seeing there is being disposed of. So we're doing random sampling to confirm that the product is not just getting piled up on somebody's property and not getting spread, because we do have it in the cost, in this cost where they have to spread it to get paid completely with that. And so there's quite a few checks and balances to make sure that we're not in the same situation that we were previously.
Any other questions or discussion?
Okay, I hope so.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, our next action item is a regionalization discussion, and the board will discuss regionalization with respect to the regionalization process strategy. The discussion in closed session may be held. This is section 388.91 Code of Iowa, and this allows a closed session for the following purpose: to discuss marketing and pricing strategies and proprietary information that may impact its competitive position by public disclosure, not required of potential or actual competitors, related to ongoing negotiations over creating an integrated regional water authority. Each of these topics should be discussed in closed session to avoid disclosure likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the Des Moines Water Works. So for this, we will, in order to go into closed session, we're going to need to do a roll call vote.
Dave Carlson,
Aye.
Sue Hubbard,
Yes.
Graham Gillette,
Yes.
Andrew Bolton.
Yes.
Okay. Andrew, would you like to
I'm sorry?
I
I'm sorry, I guess we didn't have a motion in a second.
Oh.
Oh,
I'll move it.
Ms. Hubbard was the motion. I
All right,
see a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, then we have our vote
No
unanimous.
one's changing your vote.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
It's 5:36 PM on July 23rd. We're coming out of closed session, and there is no action resulting from the closed session discussions. Moving along, some of this action was already taken, but if we do have a report from any of the committees, planning, anything to report out?
we covered the line residuals change order that we took action on, and a 28E that will be coming to the board in the future with Norwalk related to further extension of their transmission.
Good. In finance and audit,
There was none.
Yeah, we didn't meet, and I'll just jump to, oh, go ahead.
go ahead,
I
customer
was just gonna,
relations.
I don't have any for customer relations.
Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden,
There, we haven't met, although I have agreed to continue chairing that committee, so my strategic planning committee, so you're welcome.
Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation, board,
Had pretty complete already.
great presentation. Government outreach update, Laura, anything you want to update us on?
I'm just gonna, nothing to report, I'm just gonna pass out a letter that has been sent out to about 250 names of it on a database. And then we're following up with another invitation yet this week. This is an invitation, a letter and an invitation to apply to our third Citizens Water Academy.
Wonderful. Hear great things about that too, so. CEO and General Manager comments, Ted.
Two quick things. I will share that Des Moines Waterworks received a Better Plants, Better Practice Award for our energy management efforts. That's a national award from the U.S. Department of Energy to recognize all that has been done by the energy team to save all types of energy. And also, we received our $610,000 check from ACIC related to the energy settlement.
Excellent.
Close the book on
Good. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, and now we're going to, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Now we're going to move into our Des Moines Waterworks Trustees meeting. And I'm looking for approval of the minutes from our meeting last year, July 24th, 2018. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes
the pension board.
from the pension board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. At our last presentation, we had the pension plan audit presented to us. And I believe that is in your packet of information.
It is in the packet, and it includes an unqualified or clean opinion in terms of our pension plan audit.
So are there any questions? And one is, just as a reminder, one of the responsibilities as a member of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees, you are also a trustee of the Des Moines Waterworks Pension Plan. So there is this once-a-year meeting that we ensure that we accept the pension plan audit and look at additional details related to that. So
I think the action on that is to receive and file.
I'm looking for a motion to receive and file the 2018 pension plan audit that's in your packet. So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
I think one thing we can see from this, it's the best decision we made was to go into IFRS.
We also have in your packet the pension plan actuarial evaluation. What this does is it allows us to budget ahead for what we need to continue, and I think there was an excellent graphic in there. Ted, do you want to touch on this?
There's the pension plan actuarial evaluation is also in the packet, a lot of great information in there. One of the most important things in that document is the actuarially determined contribution that we need to make to the pension. Each year, $1.3 million is the calculated amount. This year, you will recall that that number dropped pretty significantly when we moved everyone to IFRS. It's moving uphill a little bit on us now, as is expected. This was a budgeted amount. Ultimately, though, we should crest that hill and start going down in another 10 years or so. So in addition to our contributions to IFRS.
What return on investment do we figure that at? Is it 7% or 6%?
It is 6%.
6%. That was a good thing we did too.
Mm-hmm. Sure was. Okay, so we do have a public comment period. Is there anyone?
I think on that one, we also have received.
Oh,
Motion to receive.
Receive and file. I'm looking for a motion to receive and file the pension plan actuarial evaluation.
So
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Public comment period. It does not appear that we have anyone here. For that, so I'll be looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And second,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.